this video, we're going to complete the KutaSoftware Infinite PreAlgebra free worksheet translations of shapes. I'll leave a link in the description below so you know how to access this free worksheet. Our directions for this first part are to graph the image of the figure using the transformation given. Now on this worksheet, it says that we're going to be doing translations. And what a translation is simply moving the figure or the shape either up, down, left, or right. And those shifts are constant. So when we move one part of the figure, we're moving all parts of that figure together. So in this, we're not going to be doing any rotations, which would be twisting the figure, and we're not going to do any reflections, which would be flipping the figure. We're just simply going to be moving it or shifting it. So let's dive into number one, knowing now what a translation is. In number one, it says our translation is 1 unit to the left. So moving 1 unit to the left is moving 1 unit in the x direction. So moving 1 unit to the left, we're going to take each of our points, in this case x, g, q, and u, and move them 1 to the left. So this point here, x, getting moved 1 to the left, will now be here. And we'll label that as x prime. We're going to do the same with g, moving that point 1 to the left, we will get here, which is g prime. Looking at q, moving it 1 to the left, shifting it, we're going to get to q prime, and then finally u, moving that 1 to the left, will give us u prime. So now that we have all of our new points or our new vertices, where those two edges meet, that's a vertex. So graphing all these vertices, drawing the edges, connecting just as before, x is connected with q, so x prime will get connected with q prime. X was connected with g, so x prime will be connected with g prime. G was connected with u, so g prime will be connected with u prime. And if you have this printed out, I recommend using a straight edge just to get those crisp, clean, straight lines. And then q is connected to u, so we're going to connect q prime to u prime. And there we have it. Our figure shifted 1 unit to the left. Let's move on to number two. In number two, we have a translation that's 1 unit right and 2 units down. So starting with our point T, our vertex T, moving that 1 to the right, we're going to land here, but now we also have to shift it 2 units down. So once we move 1 to the right, going 2 down, 1, 2, our new T, T prime, will be at that point here. Doing the same for E, 1 unit to the right, and then 2 down, E prime will be here. And then finally with I, 1 to the right and 2 down, I prime will be here at the bottom of our graph. Now, just as before, T was connected with E, E was connected with I, and T was connected with I. So I'm going to do T prime to E prime to I prime, and I prime to T prime. There we have it, that same triangle, just shifted 1 unit right and 2 units down. Let's move on to number three. For number three, our translation is 3 units right. So we're only moving in what direction? The x direction, and it's in the positive x direction. So we're increasing that x value for that vertex. Starting with y, moving 1, 2, 3 to the right, we're going to be at this point here, y prime. Next, moving on to m, moving it 3 to the right, we're going to be at this point here, m prime. Q, 3 to the right, will be here at q prime. And then lastly, t, 3 to the right, will be here at t prime. Now, just as in that original figure, we're going to connect our vertices together to form the same quadrilateral, just shifted to the right a bit. So y to m, we're going to connect y prime to m prime. M to q, m prime is going to be connected to q prime. Q to t, q prime is going to be connected to t prime. And again, as you can see, my edges aren't the straightest, so I recommend using a straight edge like a ruler to draw and connect these lines if you have it printed out. Otherwise, do your best to make the lines as straight as possible. And then connecting y prime to t prime because y was connected to t through that edge in the original figure. And there we have it, our figure in number 3. Let's move on to number 4. Number 4 says that we're going to move 1 unit right, so that's 1 unit in the positive x direction and 2 units down. So that's 2 units in the negative y direction since we're moving down in the y. So taking each of those points, each of the vertices, we're going to move 1 unit right and then 2 units down. So taking w, moving 1 right and 2 down, we're going to get to w prime. Then the same for e, 1 right and 2 down, we're going to get to e prime. And then lastly for g, 1 right and 2 down, that's going to get us to g prime. Finally, I'm going to connect my vertices together just as in that original figure. So w prime will be connected with e prime, w prime will be connected with g prime, and g prime will be connected with e prime. And there we have the triangle translated in number 4. Let's move on to number 5. In number 5, we're still graphing, except in this case, we're not given the original figure, so we're going to start by graphing the original figure. And let's assume that each unit on my x and y axis is 1 unit total. So when I go to plot u, -3, -4, this point here is 0, 0, -3, -4 is 3 to the left of 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, but then I need to move 4 down to -4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So here is my point u at -3, -4. Now, graphing m at -1, -1, starting at my center point, -1 in the x is here, and -1 in the y, once I shift it down, will be here. So here is my point m, and then lastly, L is -2, -5. So 2 to the left of my center point, 0, 0, and then 5 down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here is -2, 5, or my point L. Now connecting each vertex to the others, U connected to M connected to L, and then U connected to L. So you can see here, I have a triangle, and I could have guessed it was a triangle since I have 3 distinct points. Now I'm going to perform my translation, which is simply 5 units up. So let's start with U. Moving U 5 units up, that's 5 units in the positive y direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're at this point here. This is U prime. Another way I could calculate U prime is if I know I'm moving 5 units up, that's 5 units in the positive y direction. So my x isn't changing, so I know that U prime still is at -3 in the x, but my -4, shifting 5 up, that's adding 5 to -4, which will give me a +1. And we can confirm that this point here does indeed fall at -3, +1. And again, that was just adding 5 to -4. Let's try the same with M before we shift it on our graph visually. So M, we're moving 5 units up, so not changing the x, so it will still be at -1 in the x, but adding 5 to -1 is going to give us a +4. And let's see if this matches what we're going to get visually. And again, this is for M prime. So taking M and moving it 5 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're at this point here, M prime, which is indeed -1, 1, 2, 3, 4. So -1, 4 does indeed check out. Let's do the same for L. We have L prime, not shifting in the x, so it remains at -2, but moving 5 up, -5 plus 5 is going to give us 0. So L prime will be at -2, 0, or right here. And we can double check, is this a change of 5 up from L to get to L prime? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units up. Yes, it is. All we have to do is connect these vertices to form our triangle. U prime to M prime to L, and u prime to L prime. Let's move on to number 6. Number 6, let's go ahead and graph our original figure for reference. And you know what? Before even doing that, let's go ahead and figure out the coordinates of our translated figure. So we're going to have R prime, D prime, L prime, and F prime. What are those going to be? Well, 3 units up. Are we changing x? No. So R prime is still going to be at -4 in the x. D prime is still going to be at -4. L prime is still going to be at 0. And F prime is also still going to be at 0. I did not change my x values since we're only moving in the y direction. That's up. Remember, y direction is up and down, and moving in the x direction is right and left. So 3 units up, we're moving 3 units in the positive y direction, so we're going to be adding 3. -3 plus 3 is going to give us 0. 0 plus 3 is going to give us 3. 0 plus 3 is going to give us 3. And -3 plus 3 is going to give us 0. So here are my new coordinates of my translated figure. But let's start by graphing our original figure, and then we'll graph our translated figure. So R originally starts at -4, -3. R is going to be right here. D, -4, 0, moving -4 in the x and 0 in the y. We're going to get D here. L is at that center point, 0, 0, so fairly easy to graph. And then F is going to be 0, -3. So not changing the x, moving 3 down in the y to right here. That's F. Notice that this figure is, when we connect those vertices, a rectangle. So we're shifting this rectangle 3 units up. Let's confirm. R is now going to be at -4, 0, 1, 2, 3. Yep, here is where R prime is, where D originally was. D gets shifted 3 units up, 1, 2, 3, to be at the point -4, 3. L gets shifted 3 units up to be at the point 0, 3, so there's L prime. And F gets shifted 3 units up to land where L originally was. So here is now F prime. Connect the vertices to form our new translated figure. There we have number 6. Let's move on to the second page. Our directions for this next section simply say that we're going to find the coordinates of the vertices of each figure after the given transformation, which we kind of did in numbers 5 and 6 above, where we use the graph to help us double check. So let's go ahead and work this out. For number 7, we're moving 2 units left and 1 unit down. Remember, moving left or right is the x direction. Right is the positive x direction, so we're adding to x, and left is moving in the negative x direction, so we're going to be taking away from that x. So moving 2 units left, we're going to be subtracting 2 from each of our x coordinates. So we're going to subtract 2 from 0, subtract 2 from -2, subtract 2 from 2, and subtract 2 from 3. And I'll just make these like vertical expressions so that we can see our new coordinates. So Q prime, D prime, V prime, and J prime, starting out, figuring out those x coordinates. 0 minus 2 is a -2. -2 minus 2 is a -4. 2 minus 2 is going to be 0. And 3 minus 2 is going to be 1. Now, we're going to shift 1 unit down, which remember, 1 unit down is subtracting 1 in the y direction. So subtracting 1 from each of my y coordinates now. Q, for the y coordinate, -1 minus 1 is going to be at -2. For D, 2 minus 1, that D prime coordinate is going to be a +1. For V, shifting 1 down, 4 minus 1 is going to be a +3 for my y coordinate of V prime. And then lastly, J prime, shifting 1 down, moving J 1 unit down in the y direction. That's going to be 0 minus 1, which is a -1. So here are my new coordinates of my translated figure, moving 2 units left and 1 unit down. Q prime is -2, -2. D prime is -4, 1. V prime is 0, 3. And J prime is 1, -1. Let's do the same in number 8. In number 8, all we're doing is moving 2 units down. So moving 2 units down, that's moving in the negative y direction. So we're going to be subtracting 2 from y, meaning that our x isn't going to change. So we're subtracting 2 from each of the different y coordinates for all our vertices, but we're not changing x coordinates at all. So writing out our coordinate for D prime, we're going to remain at -4 in the x, but 1 minus 2 for our y, that's going to be a -1. For A prime, not changing that x coordinate, so leaving it at -2, but subtracting 2 from 5, we're going to be at a +3. For S prime, not changing that x coordinate, remaining at -1, but subtracting 2 from y, that's going to be 4 minus 2, which gives us 2. And then lastly, for N prime, not changing that x coordinate, so remaining at -1, but subtracting 2 for our y coordinate, that's going to get us to 0. So here we have it. That's our new translated figure, the vertices of that figure. D prime, -4, -1. A prime, -2, 3. S prime, -1, 2. And N prime, -1, 0. Moving on to number 9, our translation is 4 units left. So we're going to be moving in the x direction towards the left. So subtracting from x and 4 units up. So that's the positive y direction. So adding 4 to y. So let's figure out J prime. J prime, moving 4 units to the left, that means that -1 minus 4 is going to get us to -5. And moving 4 units up, -2 plus 4 is going to give us a +2. Now let's figure out A prime. A prime, moving 4 units left, that's -1 minus 4, which gives us a -5. And moving 4 units up, 0 plus 4 is going to give us a +4. And then lastly, for N prime, remember 4 units to the left, so we're subtracting from our x coordinate value of N. 3 minus 4 gives us a -1. And moving 4 units up, that's going to take our y coordinate and add 4. -3 plus 4 is a +1. And there we have it. The 3 vertices of our triangle in number 9. -5, 2, -5, 4, and -1, 1. For number 10, the last problem in this set of directions, we are moving 3 units to the right, so that's moving in the positive x direction, and 4 units up, moving in the positive y direction, so we're going to be adding 3 to x and adding 4 to y. So adding 3 to x and adding 4 to y. I'll make a note of each of those, adding 3 to x and adding 4 to y. Let's go ahead and write out our coordinates. Z prime, adding 3 to x, which was -4, is going to give us a -1. Then adding 4 to our -3 is going to give us a +1. So Z prime is at -1, 1. Moving on to I prime, adding 3 in the x, that's going to get us to 1, and adding 4 in the y, that's going to get us to a +2. So I prime is 1, 2. And then lastly, V prime, take -2 and add 3, since we're moving 3 right, that's going to get us to a +1. -4 plus 4, since we're moving 4 up, gives us 0. So V prime is at 1, 0. And that's the vertices of our translated figure. Let's move on to our last set of directions, where we're simply going to write a rule to describe each transformation. And again, remember this worksheet is all about translations, so we know it's going to be a translation. And we can figure out the translation by picking a vertice in the original point and seeing how far up, down, left, or right we need to move. So I'm going to start with this leftmost point I in our original figure. Now to go from I to I prime, what do? Are we shifting left or right? Nope, you can see that we're on this same grid line, so we're just going to be shifting up. And how many units is that? 1, 2, 3, 4 units up. So we have a translation of 4 units up. And that's how we describe the transformation. And just to double check, let's pick another point. Let's say U, and see how many we move to get to U prime. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 units up. So it does indeed check out. Let's move on to number 12. In number 12, we know that we're doing a translation because we're just moving the figure on this worksheet. So we have a translation, but what exactly is that translation? Let's pick a point in our original figure. So not starting with the primes, we're going to be starting with just our letters. So let's start with D, this uppermost point. To go to D prime, how much do I have to shift right or left? Well, I have to move over 1, 2, 3 in the positive X direction to get on this same line. So this is going to be 3 units right, but that's not all I have to do because I'm still not quite to D prime. I also have to go 1, 2, 3 units down. So this is a translation of 3 units right and 3 units down. And just like before, let's double check this with another point. Let's choose this point F. Let's move right 3, 1, 2, 3, and move down 3, 1, 2, 3. We do indeed get to F prime. Let's move on to number 13. Number 13 is the second to last problem on this worksheet, and if you've stuck with me so far and found this video helpful, don't forget to click that like button. For now, let's finish this out. Picking a point on our original figure, I'm going to pick this point L. So looking at L, we're going to need to move 1, 2, 3, 4 units to the left, and 1, 2, 2 units up to get to L prime. So this is going to be a translation of 4 units left and 2 units up. Again, let's double check. Looking at B, we're going to move 1, 2, 3, 4 units left and 1, 2, 2 units up to get to B prime. Moving on to the last problem on this worksheet, number 14. Let's look at this point C. In order to get to C prime, we're moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units to the right. So we're not moving up or down, not changing Y at all, just moving in the X direction, and that's that positive X direction to the right. So this is a translation. And again, it's 6 units right. And we can double check with point P. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units right. And there we have it. That's the final solution on this worksheet involving translations. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. All likes and subscriptions are greatly appreciated. Happy learning!